As the door creaked open, Melody stepped into the house. A rush of emotions washed over her face, and her voice, laced with surprise and a hint of annoyance, echoed through the hallway. "Barney, what are you doing here?" she asked, her narrowed gaze locking onto me at the kitchen table. It was clear she hadn't expected to find me home so early. The tall, younger man standing behind her seemed to share her unease. He was well-dressed, his posture rigid, as if he were bracing himself for a confrontation. Melody, my wife of 30 years, still possessed a striking beauty that had captivated me from the moment we met. Her chestnut hair cascaded in soft waves past her shoulders, framing her face beautifully. She wore a pristine white blouse, neatly tucked into a sleek black skirt that accentuated her elegance and professionalism. The blouse, unbuttoned at the top, revealed a hint of cleavage, an inadvertent nod to her enduring confidence and allure. In that fleeting moment, I was reminded of the reasons I had fallen in love with her all those years ago. Without addressing the absurdity of her question, I replied dryly, "I live here." My response only sharpened her annoyance, and she snapped back, "But why are you home at 3:30 in the afternoon?" Memories flooded my mind. Memories of the life we had built together, a life filled with love and commitment. I often told people that I had fallen for Melody the moment I laid eyes on her during a business meeting many years ago. She had been the administrative assistant, a perfect blend of charm and professionalism that had captivated me instantly. By the end of that day, I had mustered the courage to ask her out, setting in motion the beautiful story of our lives together. The man behind her finally stepped forward, his sharp features betraying a flicker of unease as he extended his hand. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, attempting to sound confident, "I'm Jacob Kaufman, a new attorney at Kellerman & Sons. I've been collaborating with Melody on some projects." I ignored his outstretched hand, keeping my gaze firmly locked on Melody. "I know exactly who and what you are," I said, my voice low and menacing. Melody flinched, a subtle crack appearing in her polished demeanor. "Why does he call you Melody in our home?" I demanded, my tone sharp. "You've always hated when people use your first name so casually. What's changed?" Her expression flickered with alarm and embarrassment. Melody had always prided herself on being in control, anticipating every detail of her life. But whatever scenario she and the so-called attorney had prepared for was unraveling before them. Taking a measured breath, I decided to break the tension. "Why don't I fix us some drinks? We can talk in the living room." Melody, her voice was quieter than usual, her usual glass of wine. Kaufman hesitated before muttering something about bourbon or craft beer. I nodded and left the room, keenly aware of their hurried whispers as I prepared the drinks. When I returned, I handed Melody her preferred Merlot and placed a dirty glass of beer in front of Kaufman. Sitting down with my own bourbon, I raised my glass in a silent toast. Kaufman took a tentative sip and grimaced. "This beer tastes strange," he remarked hesitantly. "It's Pabst Blue Ribbon," I said, amusement coloring my tone. His expression darkened, and Melody, noticing my smirk, snapped, "Isn't it the beer you always say is the worst thing you've ever tasted?" I chuckled, which only fueled her irritation. "You're such a jerk, Barney," she spat. "We came here to have a calm discussion, and all you've done is mock us." I met her gaze calmly. "You're right. Let's talk. I'm sure I'll learn some valuable lessons about being a loving, respectful husband." My sarcasm cut deep, and I could see Melody shrink under its weight. Kaufman, emboldened by her silence, attempted to interject. "Barney, it's Mr. Caldwell to you," I interrupted coldly. "Or perhaps Honorable Sir. Take your pick." His face flushed, and I turned back to Melody. "So, what is it you wanted to say?" Her frustration boiled over. "Your behavior is disgusting. Stop this right now." I replied, "Do you really think my behavior is worse than yours has been these past 6 weeks?" The color drained from her face, and Kaufman looked as if he had forgotten how to breathe. Their plan was crumbling before them. Locking eyes with Melody, I delivered the final blow. What disgusts me more? The fact that you let this man touch you, or the way you've treated me like a fool? A heavy silence fell over the room, the undeniable truth hanging between us. In that moment, I understood that their carefully crafted expectations had been utterly destroyed. Melody's eyes narrowed, and her voice dropped to a whisper. How could you possibly know? I have more allies in your workplace than you realize, I said evenly. 2 weeks ago, an anonymous letter arrived from one of your colleagues. It outlined your affair in detail and included 3 attachments. Photos of you and him at a picnic in Midwoods Park. The images showed you holding hands and kissing. Her face fell as she murmured, "I'm sorry you found out this way." Grasping for words, I cut her off, demanding, "Do you want a divorce?" "No," she replied, leaning forward on the edge of the couch, her elbows propped on her knees. Her tone grew desperate. "I love you. I don't want a divorce. What Jacob and I have is just a fleeting distraction." She spoke quickly, almost frantically. "He's new here, struggling to make friends in Connecticut. Once he settles in and meets someone else, this will end. I swear it's not serious." Her explanation left me cold. "That's not enough for me," I said, my voice firm. "When I married you, I believed we were committing to a monogamous, loving partnership. Now I see I was wrong. Divorce feels like the only option that aligns with my values." She began to plead. "Barney, no. Please don't do this. I don't want a divorce. And deep down, I don't think you do either. This was a one-time mistake, a momentary lapse. It's over now, and it won't happen again." Her voice wavered as she continued. "I was drawn to Jacob. I needed something exciting in my life, but I promise it's done. I'll never stray again." I sipped my bourbon, allowing a heavy silence to settle before responding. "Your promises mean nothing to me now. You've lied, and everyone knows it. You've shown yourself to be not only unfaithful, but shamelessly so." Her cheeks flushed with anger, but I pressed on. "Why should I believe this is a first time? For all I know, you've been doing this for years." Her voice shook as she tried to reason with me. "Barney, think about what we've built together. Kelly is married now. We're at a point where we can finally slow down and enjoy retirement. This thing with Jacob, it's nothing. It'll be forgotten soon enough." I rose from my seat and headed to the study, leaving my glass behind. When I returned, I found the 2 of them huddled on the couch, whispering as if conspiring. Kaufman looked up hesitantly and asked, "May I say something?" "Go ahead," I replied, my tone dripping with disdain. He took a deep breath before continuing. "Melody is right. This is nothing more than a brief affair. I deeply regret involving a married woman, and it's not something I've ever done before. But we connected. She's an extraordinary person," he added. "I understand why you're considering divorce, but lovely this time of year." With that, I closed the door behind me, the sound echoing like a final judgment. Outside, the night was calm, indifferent to the storm I had unleashed inside. For the first time in months, I felt a weight lift from my chest, replaced by a cold clarity. Revenge wasn't sweet. It was bitter, raw, and hollow, but it was necessary. Some betrayals demand retribution, not for justice, but for survival. As I walked down the dimly lit street, I thought of the life I'd rebuild from the ruins they had left behind. And though the road ahead seemed uncertain, one thing was crystal clear. I was done being their fool.